All praises unto the Most High. We're giving thanks unto Thee, Father, for your mercies and your kindness is true. We give thanks, Father, for you have given us this opportunity, Father, to return back unto Thee and to give Thee thy worship and thy praise. So we give thanks, Father, for all thy mercies and thy blessings. Israel, we are here again with another lesson, and it was on my spirit to come forth with this lesson. I pray that it's edifying, and I pray that the information that I give you does, in some form of way, helps you to realize, the times that we're living in, and also to know that we are, you know, in a time where people should see these these evidence that the Most High is trying to show us. And we have to take note of these things because all of this is prophecy, right? And everything is revealing itself in scriptures day by day, minute by minute, the second by the second, right? All right. Now, today we are dealing with something which is very, grievous to the Most High because the Most High do not like spiritual fornication, all right? And with spiritual fornication, right, comes with worshiping of idols. And worshiping of idols, right, is really a big slap in the face, a disrespect to the highest level unto the Most High, right? Reason being is that's like a woman and a man being married, right? And, as the man being the head of the house, providing for his wife, doing everything that is right in the sight of his wife and God to show that he's been an upful, husband to his wife, right? And she now getting everything which any woman would desire goes and cheat on her husband, right? And not only goes and cheat on her husband, but cheat on her husband with somebody which will not treat her in the same light as how that husband would have treated that wife. So it's the same thing right here, Israel, where when we, worship other gods and worship idols and put other things in front of the Most High, it's a big disrespect. It's a slap in the face. You are telling Christ that he is not worthy to be your king and he died for you for nothing. You're telling the Most High that created the heavens and the earth that he made you for nothing. Because if he did all this for you out of love, which he didn't have to, and you went and, put other idols and things before him, then what will happen? What will happen, Israel, is that you will be left wanting. You will realize in the end that that husband that you had was the best husband that you'll ever get in your entire life, which will show you that kindness and love that you truly need, that will show you that you are the apple of his eye, right? But because we are drawn into this world and the things of this world, we get short sighted. But because as a good husband, he forgives his wife for, you know, having a fornicated, you know, relation with someone else, which really and truly is nothing. It's actually, what I would say, vanity. Not only vanity, but something which cannot deliver you, can't provide for you, can't do anything for you more than what you want from that idol, right? So we're going to get into it, Israel. I'm going to touch on this verse, and not just on the idols, but to segue into why are some of these things happening in the world which are taking place right now. And people thinking it's just, you know, a bad scenario or people are having a disagreement. But no, the Most High is putting his foot down, just as though a husband would be putting his foot down and saying, listen, I'm not going to have none of your, cheating on me and then coming into my house like everything is okay and having somebody else out there that you are fornicating with. No, it's not going to happen. So this is what the Most High is doing. He's putting down his foot, right? And he's letting you know. And not only that, but he's also what? Turning the curses from who? Israel back onto who? The Gentile nations for all their mistreatment of his people, right? So that's like the person that your wife went and cheat with, they mistreated her, they beat her, right? They didn't feed her properly, they didn't do the things that you did, but only showed her cruelty and hatred. And as being a good husband, you are there to protect your wife, even when she went astray. And that's what the Most High is doing. So, Israel, no further ado, let's get into this clip right here. We're going to show you that when you worship things which are made of man's hands, it will not deliver you. It is so silly that it doesn't make sense. I don't understand it. I never did. But nevertheless, it's a spirit that is gone out there in the world by these fallen angels that are trying to deceive the world. But we are here to break that deceiving on the people and bring you back unto the Most High, because the Most High is the true and one and only God, the Holy One of Israel, right? The creator of the heavens and the earth, which sent his son to deliver us, right, from our sinful and foolish ways, right? Through Christ, we shall be delivered. So, with no further ado, Israel, let's get into it.
A large number of Indians have thrown the idols of the gods they worshipped on the streets as the numbers of coronavirus infections and deaths skyrocket in the country. Indians expressed their anger at the idols that they worshipped and sacrificed themselves for, but the idols did not protect them from the coronavirus. They prayed to the idols because they believed that it could save them from the virus, but they finally discovered that they could not do anything, and hence they destroyed it. The number of daily coronavirus deaths in India has been reaching a record number of 3,780, as the total number of infections exceeded 20 million. India's underfunded health system has struggled to cope with the recent wave of COVID, with patients dying in hospital parking lots from lack of oxygen and beds.
All right. So there you go, Israel, right? Your idols cannot save you, right? And this is not trying to be disrespectful to any other Gentile nations, but the truth is the truth, and the truth will set you free. If they can realize it, so can we, Israel, right? And a lot of people who are of the Most High um, family, which is not to say that the Most High does not love everybody, but he's more directly you know to his people. We made a covenant with it. He didn't make any covenant with any other nation but Israel, right? So being of Israel, right, we're going to show you why you should not worship any other God, because this will happen and the Most High will not play around, right? So now, to show you that the Most High is a very serious and very, not playing around father nor husband, right? He will show you that he will not take any more of your disrespect, right? Now, Israel, let's get into it again. Now, this is another one where this took place in, Jerusalem, and, they're doing their worship. But clearly, they're not worshiping the true Father, right? They're not worshiping the Elohim of who? The Holy One of Israel, which is in Christ, right? They're doing something totally different, right? So let's get into it, Israel. And as I said, this is nothing a personal attack on any, specific people. It's just really getting through to the truth of why certain things are taking place. And we're going into scriptures to show you that. Now let's get into it again, Israel.
A very important story which unfortunately broke in the last couple hours. Another crisis in the Jerusalem area during a religious celebration of the Jewish festival of Shavuot. A bleacher appears to collapse, sending hundreds trampling down. 2 killed. From what we understand now, we can say that one was a 12-year-old boy, the other a man believed to be around age 40. Dozens others are injured, and the Israeli security forces and emergency services are still assessing the damage. Unfortunately, another crisis, another horrific disaster, really, for the Orthodox community, still reeling from the horror at Mount Meron when a stampede claimed 45 lives. Of course, a lot to understand and a lot of questions that still need to be answered after this incident from the Israeli police, the local municipalities, the emergency medical services, and all those that were impacted and had a responsibility to potentially ensure that these people would be safe, including the residents and those worshipers themselves.
No, as I said, Israel, right? The Most High is showing his hand because they are worshiping other gods and not the true God of Israel, right? Even though, yes, they're living in Jerusalem, but it shows you all around the world we have made up our own images of what we think God is, right? So let's get into the next clip, right? Just to show you, Israel, that the Most High is not playing around, right? And he is putting his foot down, and he's letting you know, no more, no more.
Northern Israel has killed at least 44 people. The crash happened at a gathering for tens of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews on Mount Meron. Our correspondent Harry Fawcett's near the scene. He's going to be updating us shortly. First, this report from Sarah Khairat.
Emergency services rushed to the scene where tens of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews had gathered for the Lag BaOmer annual pilgrimage. What started off as an all-night gathering of prayer and dance at the bonfire festival ended with these chaotic scenes. Bodies of those killed in a stampede are lined up. Hundreds of people are injured.
Provided first aid to those who were injured at the site. We sent out backup teams, 200 ambulances, motorcycles, mobile intensive care units, helicopters to the scene in order to transport and evacuate those who were injured and killed to the hospitals.
Considered to be one of the holiest sites for Jews, the tomb of the 2nd century sage Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is what brings the faithful here. Around 30,000 pilgrims were gathered on Mount Meron, 3 times the capacity of what was allowed by the authorities. Organisers say more than 650 buses had brought in people from across the country, making it the largest public gathering in Israel since the pandemic started.
All of a sudden we saw paramedics from Madda and whatever running by, like mid-CPR on kids, and then one after the other started coming out, ambulances, and then we understood like something's going on here.
Private bonfires at Mount Meron were banned last year due to coronavirus restrictions. The lockdown measures were eased this year after Israel's rapid COVID-19 vaccination program has seen more than 50% of the population fully vaccinated.
No, as I said, Israel, this is nothing personal on any other, people or nation. but we are just getting into a scriptural and prophetic, you know, things which is taking place right now within the earth. And it's showing you that the Most High is really putting his foot down, right? And unfortunately, if we do not listen, right, these are the things which will happen if we keep doing these things which are of, you know, idol worshiping, right? So we're going to go straight into this right here, you know, Israel, which this is called, this is from the Apocrypha, and it's called Bel and the Dragon, right? Now, to give you a quick synopsis of the story, is just that this was Daniel, and when Daniel was in Babylon, right, he he gained great respect in Babylon before all, well, most of the kings which were there, right? And they grew to love and respect Daniel because he was a righteous man and he stood up for what he believed in, which was the God of Israel, right? Which he believed in that would deliver him, right? And also knew of the prophecies of Christ, right? Now, this is in the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha is a part of the Bible which was taken out, but now, you know, through the Most High's, you know, blessings and awakening of, you know, the people, now the information now is available. So now we really and truly don't need to say that we don't have, you know, enough information to really, you know, confirm what is taking place. Now, I'm going to read this story. It's a very good story, right? I want you to just bear with me now, Israel, right? So this is Daniel, and he's going to tell you about all these idol worshiping statues that they had in these time, which was known as Persia back in those days, or the Assyrians, right? So the story of, you know, Bel and the dragon is a very, very key story to what we're dealing with right now, Israel. So I'm going to start at verse 1, all right? And it reads, and the king Astarage was gathered to his fathers. Forgive me if I didn't pronounce that name properly, but um, he was gathered to his fathers, and Cyrus of Persia received his kingdom, right? And Daniel conversed with the king and was honored above all his friends, right? So it goes to show you that Daniel was very respected, right? Funny enough, this information is not in the book of Daniel, right? So if you go into the King James version of the Bible where you see Daniel, you won't get this information. But if you get the the Apocrypha, which you can download in your Google Play Store, right, you will get this information. You can read it, and you should read the rest of the books as well because they're very, very, very informative, and it ties to the Bible as well. Certain things that you didn't grasp very well, you know, a lot of the books there really highlights that and really put everything in perspective, right? Now, Daniel was very respected in Babylon, right? Even this is when we, you know, our people, you know, actually fornicated, spiritually fornicated against our father, which is what? We started idol worshiping, worshiping other gods. And because of that, just as I told you before, our father said, no, we're not having it no more, putting my foot down. So we end up, you know, going into captivity. So if you did not know, you think that, let's say Negro people, right? Because not everybody that's dark skinned is actually Negro. So let's say Negro people have been into slavery more than one time. Don't think that is this, you know, if you're living now, you think that, you know, oh yes, during the time of, you know, the the passage where, you know, they had all these people coming from Africa, you know, taking all over the world. That was just that time of slavery. No, actually was way before that. Our people was doing these things before, and you know, unfortunately, we're very hard headed. You know, we don't learn from our mistakes very well. So because of that, we went back and forth into captivity. So let me continue, right? So Daniel was conversed with the king and was honored above all his friends. And now Babylon and idols called Bel, and they were serpents upon him. Every day, 12 great measures of fine flour and 40 sheep and 6 vessels of wine, right? So they were feeding this lifeless God that they think that was a living God, right? So let's continue. And the king worshipped it and went daily to adore it. But Daniel worshipped his own God, which is the true God, right? And the king said unto him, why doesn't not thou worship Baal? Because you were saying to yourself, Daniel, I give you so much respect in a place and thing, why is it that you're not worshiping the God that I worship, right? So he answered him and said, who answered and said, because I may not worship idols made with hands by but the living God, right? So let's read it again. Who answered and said, because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living God. Who is that living God now? Who had created the heavens and the earth? And what again? And had sovereignty over all flesh. But unfortunately, these Gentile nations don't see it like that, right? So we're going to get into it. So this is way back then, So this is not new, right? So there's not new underneath the sun. So this has been happening from day one, right? So then the king said unto him, thinkest thou not that Bel is a living God? Seest thou not how much he eateth and drinketh every day? Then Daniel said to him, ha. Then Daniel smiled and said, O king, be not deceived, for this is but clay within and brass without, and did never eat or drink anything. So you can just imagine now, you're a virgin where you rate, and you give him so much respect, and him tell you, say, your God that you worship is not a true God, it's just wood and brass or clay. So he said, so the king was wroth and called for his priests and said unto them, if ye tell me not who this is that devoureth these expenses, he shall die. Right? But if they can certify me that Bel devoured them, then Daniel shall die. For he had spoken blasphemy against Bel. And Daniel said unto the king, let it be according to thy word. Right? So Daniel was saying, you know what? Yeah, man, if we find out that Bel is eating all this food that you're providing for him, you can definitely put me to death. Because Daniel was confident. He was sure, just like I am sure. I can tell you. Now the priests of Bel were 70, beside their wives and children, and the king went with Daniel into the temple of Bel. Right? So Bel priest said, lo, we go out, but thou, O king, set on the meat and make ready the wine, and shut the door fast and seal it with thine own signet. So that is like his signature, right? He has something where he seal it with, right? The king's signet. And tomorrow when thou comest in, if thou findest not that Bel had eaten up all, we will suffer death. Or else Daniel, that speaketh falsely against us. And they little regarded, for under the table they had made a privy entry, whereby they entered into it continually and consumed those things. So it goes to show you here, Israel, that even the priests them are run craft, right? They're crafting the people, them, telling the king that is, the statue eating all this food when it's them and them family, right? So let's read down here again. So when they were gone forth, the king set meat before Bel. Now Daniel had commanded his servants to bring ash, and those that and those they strew throughout all the temple in the presence of the king alone. Then went they out and shut the door and sealed it with the king's signet, and so departed. So Daniel knew that it was them priests eating the food, not no statue eating no food, or no bell and dragon, no bell eating no food. He knew it, right? So here we go now. So now in the night came the priests with their wives and their children, and they want to do and did eat and drink up all. So you see, Daniel knew they came into the night. So now the priests them came into the night with their wives and their children, as were as what they had planned, and they ate all that food. So you must know that these people were very craven, right? And it was more than one priest, obviously, right? Because it says priest, so it's S on it, so it's more than one priest. So a big gathering of them going in there with them family and crafting the people and talking about his bell, right? So we have priests like this now to this day, crafting the people, telling them about all these things, just like in India, praying to idols which cannot benefit them. And this is why they have this destruction happening in the earth, because the Father is showing you, but people are not seeing it, right? Now look, in the morning, the bedtime, the kings arise and Daniel went with him, right? And the king said, Daniel, are the seals whole? And he said, Yea, O king, they be whole. So the signet weren't broken, so obviously nobody could have entered, right? And as soon as he had opened the door, the king looked upon the table and cried aloud, with a loud voice, sorry, Great art thou, O Bel, and with thee is no deceit at all. So the king think that Bel eat this food. So he looked on the table and said, all the food gone. Then laughed Daniel and hailed the king that he shouted not going in, and said, Behold, now the pavement, and mark well whose footprints are these. And the king said, I see footsteps. I see footsteps of men, women, and children. And then the king was angry, right? So it goes to show you. So even here, the footsteps where Daniel said before, king should not go in, and said, behold, now the pavement, and marking well whose footsteps are these, right? And the king said, oh, I see footsteps of men, women, and children. So the king knew right away that some crafting was going on, something fishy was up, right? And took the priests, their wives and children, who showed him the privy doors where they came in and consumed such things as were upon the table. Therefore the king slew them and delivered Bel into Daniel's power, who destroyed him and his temple, right? So it goes to show you here, Israel, that when you're worshiping a false god or things which are made by man's hand, it will not profit you. But the Most High said that this will happen because of our disobedience as a people, right? And we lose ourselves. We wouldn't know who we are in our captivity because what? We have, gone astray. Our forefathers have gone astray and worshiping idols. So what? Spiritual fornication. This is why now these things are happening in the world, which, as you can see before when I showed you those clips, they're worshiping things which is not of the Most High. And because of that, the Most High is turning the curses back onto these Gentile nations, right? And who have done very, cruel things onto his people as well, right? So let's actually read down some more into this story, because the story is very interesting, right? So after he slew all the priests and his, that's how serious it is, The priests, not just the priests, them got slain, but his wife and children, right? So it goes to show you it's the same thing that's happening now, even in these other Gentile nations where children are dying because they're being a part of it. Probably not by, them having, by ignorance, because they see that their elders are doing it. So obviously they grow up into it. So obviously they will be a part of it, and that's understandable. But when you're not doing things which are right, the Most High will come down on anybody. So it doesn't matter, man, woman, or child will get caught in that, judgment, right? Now, here we go again. And in that same place, there was a great dragon, which they of Babylon worship, right? And the king said unto Daniel, Wilt thou also say that this is of brass? Lo, he liveth, he eateth and drinketh. Thou cannot not say that he is not a living God, therefore worship him. Then Daniel said unto the king, I will worship the Most High, my Elohim, for he is the living God. And this is what, we should be doing without even second guessing, right? But give me leave, O king, and I shall slay the dragon without sword or staff. The king said, I give thee leave. So, the king said, okay, Daniel, if you can slew the dragon, slew him. And Daniel said, I'm going to slew him without a staff and without a sword. So that goes to show you that it's lifeless. So Daniel took a pitch and fat and air and did sit them together and made lumps thereof. This he put in the dragon's mouth, and so the dragon burst into asunder. And Daniel said, Lo, these are the gods ye worship, right? So he basically, made up some stuff, put in the dragon's mouth, and it end up, bursting. It end up getting destroyed because it was not of a living entity. It was vanity, vain, carnal, right? So when the Babylonians heard that, they took a great indignation and conspired against the king, saying, the king is become a Jew, and he had destroyed Bel, he had slain the dragon, and put the priest to death. So the king was really under pressure because the people have come upon him now, right? So they came to the king and said, deliver us Daniel, or else we will destroy thee and thy house. So the king said, all right, I'll give him. But he never really wanted to do it, but he was pressured into it, right? Now when the king saw that they pressed him sore, being constrained, he delivered Daniel to him, right? And you know what they did? Who cast him into the lion's den, where he was 6 days, right? And in the den, there were 7 lions, and they had given them every day 2 carcasses and 2 sheep, which then were not given to them to the intent they might devour Daniel, right? So they didn't feed the lions, right? Just because they wanted them to devour Daniel. But we show you now that we have the true and living God, right? No, there was in Jewry a prophet called Habakkuk. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, who had made pottage and had broken bread in a bowl and was going into the field for to bring it to the reapers, which, he had a field, so he was bringing in some food for the man and working in the field. But the angel of the Most High said unto Habakkuk, go and carry this dinner that thou hast into Babylon unto Daniel, who is in the lion's den. Right? And Habakkuk said, Lord, I never saw Babylon, neither do I know where the den is. Right? But to show you how the Most High angels and the Most High is the living God, this is what he did. Then the angel of the Most High took him by the crown and bare him by the hair of his head, and through the vibrancy of his spirit set him in Babylon over the den. So basically, the angel took him through a portal, right? And then he ended up in Babylon, right? And Habakkuk cried and saying, oh, Daniel, take dinner which God has sent thee. And Daniel said, thou hast remembered me, O Elohim, neither hast thou forsaken them that seek thee and love thee. Right? It shows you from you obey and you be truthful and you being diligent to the Most High and not worshiping no other God, he will provide for you. I can vouch for that. I personally can vouch for that, right? Because the Most High is providing for me when I was in a state where things weren't the best. But the Most High, since I started, serving the true and living God, the Most High turned everything around for me, right? He's going to provide for you what you truly need, right? Now, look, and Daniel said, thou hast remembered me, O Elohim, neither hast thou forsaken me that seekest thee and lovest thee. Right? So you love the Father, you seek for him, he's seeking after him, he will definitely look after you. Right? No doubt about it, just like a good husband. So Daniel arose and did eat, and the angels of the Most High set Habakkuk in his own place again immediately. So you see, the angels then just sent care about the prophet again through the portal and set him back in his place where he was, just as a blink of an eye, right? So that shows you the real power of the Most High, right? He is a true and living God, right? Which dwelleth in Christ. Now look at this now, Israel. Unto the 7th day, the king went to bewail Daniel, and when he came to the den, he looked in, and behold, Daniel was sitting, right? So he was back, you couldn't believe he was looking to come and see piece of Daniel foot over one side and him hand over there, so right? Then cried the king with a loud voice, saying, great are the Most High of Daniel, and there is no other beside thee. So even the king of Babylon, Cyrus, realized that, you know what? The God of Daniel is the true and one and only God. And right there, it proved it to him because there's no way he could be in a lion den with him. Don't feed the lion, and the lion them don't devour him. You know what I mean? Now check it again. And he drew him out and cast those that were, cause of his destruction into the den, and they were devoured in a moment. before his face. So it goes to show Israel, right? That sometimes when you wish evil on somebody, when it's not of a just cause, whatever you wish on that person will come right back round onto you. So this is why the most I tell you, you must love your brothers and love your sisters, right? And flee away from wrath and variances and all these things, right? So this is a great story here, Israel, to show you that what? When you're dealing with what? When you're dealing with this, Israel, which is idolatry, which these people have to be what? Throwing these things in the sea. Here we go, right? They're throwing them off into the water because they realize now that what? It can't help them, right? It cannot save them from anything, right? So I'm going to go to another clip real quick, Israel, right? And this is what's taking place in the earth right now because the Most High is putting his foot down, right? And this now is in Jerusalem. And this is, between the Palestinians and, the people which are living in Jerusalem now, right? So let's get into it.
This is a huge demonstration of support for the armed wing of Hamas, the Qassam brigades. And they're sending a message as well that despite the hammering they've taken from the Israelis, that they're still here, they're still ready to fight, and they're talking as well about Jerusalem. That's been the theme of many of the chants here in the cemetery.
And in Jerusalem, more violence between Palestinian worshippers and Israeli police at the Aqsa Mosque. The holy places in the city are charged with national as well as religious significance for Israelis and Palestinians. In Gaza, Hamas claimed victory, as Israel did too.
Right? So here you go, Israel. This is what we're showing you, right? That all these destruction and tribulation that's taking place right now is because the curses have been spinned around from Israel, the true Israelites, right, onto the Gentile nations, which have conspired against the Most High's people to do them all type of evil, even though they did wrong, And the Most High used these other nations to discipline us, just like as you just read there, even in Babylon, right, where Daniel was there. Daniel was an Israelite, you know what I mean? Yeah, right. He was from the same place that you're seeing right now, in Jerusalem, right? Well, this is Palestine, but as you saw earlier, right? And because of our disobedience, but it shows you though that when you're obedient to the Father, even though Daniel was in the midst of the corruption, the Most High still showed him favor, just like he's showing me favor in Babylon right now, right? Just as though you are, wherever you are in the part of this world, right? Wherever this message reaches you, right? That if you are from that lineage of people of family which have been taken from a certain place from the world and scattered all over, 10 out of 10 times, I'm telling you, you are an Israelite, right? You are from the house of Israel, right? And these are the things which are taking place right now, Israel, right? That we have to be very knowledgeable about. Now, let's quickly go to Psalms and where it talks about all this idolatry, right? And it reads, their idols are silver and gold, the works of man's hands. So this is Psalms 115, verse 4, and we're going to read, read the whole passage down, right? So if you even check it, right? All the things that these guys are worshiping, just a while ago, I just showed you that they're having, even though there's a ceasefire in Palestine and Israel right now, right? There's still conflicts there, right? There's still conflict there because the Most High is still putting that, foot down because they are still worshiping, idol worship. So there we go now. There are idols of silver, their idols are silver and gold, the work of man's hands. They have mouth, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. Ears have they, but they hear not. Nose have they, but they smell not. They have hands, but they handle not. Feet have they, but they walk not. Neither speak they through their throat. Right? So even though they have mouths, they still can't speak because they're made of wood, clay, brass, silver, gold, right? They that make them are like unto them. So is everyone that trusted in them. See that? But watch this now, Israel. O Israel, trust thou in the Most High. He is their help and their shield. I want to catch that, Israel. Let me read it again. O Israel, trust thou in the Most High. He is their help and their shield. Right? Let's read again. O house of Aaron, which is the house of the priest. That's why I say, O house of Aaron. If you know about Aaron, Aaron is a priest from the priestly order, just as Moses. Aaron is Moses' brother. Right? Trust in the Most High. He is their help and their shield. So you notice when I read the story, Bel and Bel and the dragon, the priest trusted in what? Wood and brass, or clay and brass, right? And when they put food in front of the clay and brass, they're the ones that eat it. So even them themselves knew that these weren't no true gods, because if they were and they eat the god's food, the gods would have reprimanded them for it, wouldn't they? Of course. So it's them and them family eat it. So they're crafting everybody, just like how these people are crafting themselves. Number 11, he that fear the Most High, trust in the Most High. He is their help and their shield. So the Most High is saying that 2 times, if you notice, right? He's telling you, right? The Most High had been mindful of us. He will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. So you see, Father is telling you, he's going to bless the house of Israel and he's going to bless the house of the priest, right? So if you just work with what the Father tell you to do and do what he's telling you, you can't go wrong, right? Let's read number 13. He will bless them that fear the Most High, both small and great. So you see, even in these things that's taking place right now, Israel, with Palestine and all these things in Israel, the young ones are suffering just as the small and the great. It means even the ones which are in higher power and lower power, young ones and older. So it shows you the Most I was telling you that, everybody's going to receive of his foot putting down, because he's not going to take no more of this idol worshiping, because the curses has been turned around, right? The time is up. The Most High shall increase you more and more, you and your children. So you see, the Most High is telling you, come back again. If you obey him, he will bless you and your children. He are blessed of the Most High, which made the heavens and the earth. The heavens, even the heavens are the Most High, but the earth had he given unto the children, sorry, the children, I don't know why I'm saying that, children of men, right? So the children, oh gosh, the children, Hey, what wanted Israel? So all the children of men will inherit the earth. Reason being is that the Most High had, created the heavens because He's in the heavens, and the earth is for men, right? So it goes to show Israel that if we follow what the Most High is telling us, we will be blessed, all right? So he says here, dead praise the dead praise not the Most High, neither any that goes down into silence. Means that people what which is already passed away and dead cannot praise the Most High. But we will bless the Most High from this time forth and forevermore. Praise the Most High, right? So the Most High is telling you that you must look to Him and not to idols. So idols can be from money worshiping to your worshiping celebrities to your worshiping a cow. You can be worshiping the moon, the sun. You could be worshiping nature. Talking about nature is God. You cannot do that. The Most High is telling you that He is the one that created all, right? And let's go to Ezra real quick. So this is um, Second Ezra chapter chapter 15, verse 4, right? So now Second Ezra is in the Apocrypha. So you want to read this, just download the Apocrypha onto your phone, right? And it reads, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness, right? The most, make sure I like that. That's number 4. But that's how we're kicking it off right here, right? For what? For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. So the Most High said, if you're not faithful to Him and you're unfaithful, this is what's going to happen. Now read this now, Israel. Watch this. Behold, saith the Most High, I will bring plague upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. So the Most High is telling you, He's bringing what? A sword. And He's bringing famine. He's going to bring death and destruction. Reason being, why? Because we are dealt in what? Idol worshiping, right? And even our own people too is going to get some of this if they're not, getting themselves right. So if you're still in that type of mentality and worshiping things which is not of the true Elohim of Israel, you are going to be caught up into what? Fire. You're going to be caught up into death, famine, all kind of things. Sword means just like, you see what's taking place right now with the gun violence and the bombing, all these things, right? For the wickedness had exceedingly plowed the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. See that, Israel? Right? Let's continue. Therefore saith the Most High, I will hold my tongue no more, as touching their wickedness, which they profanely commit, neither will they suffer them in those things in which they wickedly exercise themselves. Behold, the innocent and the righteous blood crieth unto me, and the souls of the unjust complain continually. Right? So the Most High is showing you that these things that they have done, right, it's going to come back on them. And because all of these innocent blood that they have shed of the righteous, right, is crying out unto the Father for justice. And He will no longer hold His tongue, right? So now He's turning these things around. Now let's read a little bit more here. And therefore, saith the Most High, I will surely avenge them that receive unto me all the innocent blood from among them. All right? And why He's going to do that now? Behold, my people is led as a what? As a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of where? Egypt. So spiritual Egypt would be, America. but not only just America, but all those other countries which is associated in terms of, you know, dealing unrighteously with his people, which are who? The Hebrew Israelites. Israelites are, you know, the people which the Most High made the covenant with. You don't have to take my word for it. Read the Bible. It's simple as that. Go and read Exodus 20. You know, start from there, right? Or just read all of Exodus and you'll see for yourself who he made the covenant with, right? When Moses took them out, right? So let's read down to 12, right? But I'm going to read 11 as well. But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm and smite Egypt with plagues as before. See, as before. So it's showing you that is something that did happen before, and now he's gonna do it again. So it doesn't mean that it's literal Egypt, which was back then. Now it's a spiritual Egypt, which is doing all type of manner of evil, which is idol worshiping, you know, mistreating the Most High's people, you know, putting out all type of wickedness in the world right now. We're subjecting a lot of people and everybody in this world to do things which they do not feel comfortable doing, and it's going against the Most High's will, right? Now look at this again now, Israel, right? And smite Egypt with the plagues and as before, sorry, and will destroy all the lands thereof. See, so the Most High is telling you, he will also destroy all the lands thereof. Now, let me read down to 12. Egypt shall mourn, and the foundations of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that the Most High shall bring upon it. So it's showing you, Israel, right? That when we get caught up into, right, things like these, right, he will smite you. He will bring, right? He's going to bring the pain, right? He's going to bring the sword, just as what he said, right? And it shows you here, these people realize that these things that they made with their hands is not helping them because, you know, all that they're praying to these wood and metal and silver and gold and bronze, it's not helping them, right? And we have to, even myself, have to be very mindful of these type of things, right? Because idolatry comes in very different patterns and fashions. Because you could be looking up to like an entertainer, and you might not really realize it, but you're idolizing that person. What do you think they call it? Idolizing. Because idolatry. That's the trick. That's what the devil did. It isn't him and him fallen angel. If you notice, American Idols, if you watch that program, see, they're letting you, you know, worship that person without you even really knowing it. Even you might think that you're not worshiping the person, but you're giving that person that type of respect. Even if you yourself haven't done it, other people might do it, where they have that person in a certain stratosphere, almost like, you know, boy, this person might tell him I like to be like them, you know what I mean? But, you know, every minute they consume with the person, they might, you know, watch all the videos and, you know, you can't tell them nothing about this person. It's their artist or their entertainer, you know, foolishness, right? And that person really and truly doesn't even give 2 cents about them, right? Which your father cares about you. That's the difference. No matter how insignificant you think that you are, or how less you think that you are, or even if you don't have millions of dollars, he will treat you the same way as he will treat that person that lives in a mansion or lives uptown and you live in downtown, right? He doesn't partial when it comes on to his love. And also he doesn't partial when it comes on to his judgment. Because if he did this to his own people by scattering them all over the world and letting them be afflicted by these other nations, then what he will do to these people. It only shows you, and it's starting already, right? It has started already, right? To goes to show you that this is not nothing personal on any other nation, but it's showing you that the Most High is telling you that he will not have any more of these type of behaviors.
Down, 2 killed. From what we understand now, we can say that one was a 12-year-old boy, the other a man believed to be around age 40.
So the Most High is not playing about, right? The young and the old, everybody will get a part of this plague, right? Same as though it came for the children of Israel, right? When the Romans came in, it was the same thing, right? Children died. You know, nobody is talking about that. Nobody is feeling sorry for those people back then, our forefathers. You know what I mean? I have heard of these Jews, you know, I'm just telling you what is factual, that, well, let me say Jewish people, right, have, you know, gotten back reparations for when Hitler was doing, you know, some wicked things to them, right? But yet, you know, the Israelite people or Negro people, which have been, you know, enslaved, have not gotten back anything, no reparation, no nothing. It's like it was swept under the rug, right? And our plight was more than 400 years. You know what I mean? 400 years is just when, you know, that was the rooting of Israel out of Israel, right? But before that, right, even then we were still rooted out of Israel, but I mean, we weren't scattered around the world. You know what I mean? It was just like Egypt or Assyria, you know, Samaria, you know, these countries which were basically still round about Israel weren't that far off, right? And they still knew who they were. We know as a people don't know who we were. I didn't know who I was, right? I took the time out because it was on my spirit to find out and say, no, something is not adding up. And through my, you know, trying to find and bustle through the rubble, trying to find my way back to the light, right? The Most High was gracious unto me, and Christ, you know, gave me an opportunity to be back into his fold, right? And we should try our best to try to find the Most High, not to make up any assertions or blame anything or point any fingers, because that won't solve anything by trying to blame anybody, right? If you want to blame anybody, we should blame our own selves and our forefathers, because we are the one that put ourselves in this position. Nobody else. Nobody else could come against us. If you read the Bible, it tells you the Bible is a history book. If you read the Bible, it shows you the history, right? It shows you the history. So there is no excuse. If people tell me they don't want to read it because why it mix up and all that no work this and you know, why is it that, you know, the father make this happen to people, and then how are you going to know if you don't take the time out to find out why? Because if you notice in life, nothing happens in a sense without a reason. It happens because of a reason. And the Most High couldn't be so holy and unjust that he would just allow people to die unjustly. That's not the Most High. And at no time I ever think that. I always know that, you know, there was this piece of the story that I was not getting. And all the time it was right in front of me. But because the devil set a stumbling block before us, we cannot see it because we are looking at things from a perspective of religion and Christianity. So that's where the stumbling blocks comes in, because we see these things as things which are not fruitful. And rightly so, because when you go to the church, you see this white guy, on a cross, which is not Christ, right? And you worshiping that guy. Because if you know that you're coming from the Caribbean or certain parts of the world, they have this white guy promoting as Christ. That's a lie in itself. So why is it that these guys in Israel and Jerusalem right now, I've never seen them worshiping the same white guy on a cross? Nobody's telling them that that's not the way it should go. If you go to the Kabbalah stone where they worship as well, it's a stone, and there no. I don't see no white guy on a cross, right? If you go to Asia, in China, you don't see them worshiping no white guy on a cross. They're worshiping Buddha, right? Just as this, we just went here into India. India, you won't see no white guy on no cross. If you do, you might see it very minutely, because main thing in India is these things that they worship here. Krishna and the god of all kind of something. There's so many gods there. Hindu, Mindu, Chingsu, you know what I mean? And see, it never helped them, right? See there? This is what they're doing there, God. No, you think now, if this was God, you could be putting God in the back of a truck and throw him off in the water? Right? So Israel, we got to get back to being with the right meditation, right? Within the right spectrum of who the Most High is. So we got to take the time out to read the Bible. And it states right here, right? Their idols are silver and gold, the work of man's hands, right? So Israel, I think I knocked home the point as where I wanted to. And I pray that this has been edifying for you and informative to where it might encourage you to go and do your own research, not just take Soulfire's own word for it, but read the scriptures for yourself. Do your own historical checks, which the Bible does confirm. You can go and do it again. There's a lot of information around. All right, and do your checking on all these other nations and their gods, what they worship. If you go into a Chinese restaurant right now, you're not going to see no Jesus on which well, you're not going to see a white guy on the wall in a Chinese restaurant. No, you're going to see a bullfrog, or you're going to see Buddha, or you're going to see a jade stone. These are the things you're going to see. You go into an Indian restaurant, you're not going to see that. Don't take my word for it. Go into an Indian restaurant and look in there if you ever seen anything like that. Never. You see Krishna on the wall with this thing with more than one hand. You know what I mean? You see this other thing over there. So all type of things. You've never seen that, right? Right? If you even go to a Jewish mosque, you never see a white guy on a cross and then saying that that's Christ. No. Right? Only Negro people, they give that to. And they know, right? This is why the Most High is coming back with a sword, because what? They have led his people like slaughter to the lamb. And because of that, it's been a stumbling block for a lot of our people. And a lot of our people are not going to receive this word, unfortunately. But we still have to put it out there, you know what I mean? So that people can get it and hopefully it can help them. So until I see you again, Israel, I pray that the Most High keeps you in best of health. And I pray that you find your way back onto the Most High. So until I see you again, one love, shalom.